everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion. Good afternoon to our panelists as well. Thank you very much for being here this afternoon. I think it's very apt that on this day when we are talking about sustainability, that we talk about women's empowerment and about fostering entrepreneurship. Because one cannot talk about sustainable development unless one talks about equitable and inclusive development that also includes women. When we think about development, women are affected a lot more than men in some ways by a number of development challenges. Be it issues of poverty, be it issues of health, food security, climate change. And at the same time, they also have the ability and the skills and the ideas to contribute to meeting many of these challenges. But that is only possible if we create an enabling environment for them to do so. It's also a fairly well-known fact that when you enhance the income of a woman, she contributes she contributes to the well-being of her family and of her children, and in turn leads to long-term growth. It's also a well-known fact that when you increase the income of a woman, she also adds to the well-being of her family. She invests in her children, which in turn leads to long-term growth of the economy as a whole. There was a recent statistic and study out by the World Bank which said that if more women in India went into the workforce, India's economic growth rate could increase by 1.5 percentage points. But the sad fact is that there are not many women in the formal workforce within India. Whereas around 80% of men in India in the workforce, only 30% of women are in the formal workforce. Likewise, women are also lagging behind with respect to literacy, with respect to skilling. Within households, there is great disparity between men and women, not just in terms of income, but also in terms of women's access to resources. And what does this mean for entrepreneurship? This means that in India, only 14% of entrepreneurs are women. And most of this entrepreneurship is very micro household level entrepreneurship, targeting an enhancement of the women's incomes, but it's not really large-scale businesses which are employing other women and enhancing economic growth of the nation as a whole. Given the scale of this challenge, what is the corporate sector doing? In terms of CSR, currently only about 3% of CSR spend is explicitly targeted at women's empowerment. So in terms of creating livelihood generation for women in rural areas, leadership opportunities, skilling of women, that's only about 3%. But of course, there is a lot of work being done in other areas like education, which will in turn enhance the skills and abilities of young women to contribute to the economy in future years. So given this challenging context and the challenging statistics, I'd like to focus this afternoon's discussion firstly on what the barriers and challenges to women are with respect to their economic participation, and particularly with respect to entrepreneurship. And then to also consider what role CSR can possibly play towards mitigating some of these challenges. So I'd like to start the discussion with Prerna and to get some of your perspective from your research into what are the real challenges facing women.
Thank you, Amituj. It's kind of very striking that the entire panel is that of women when we're talking about women. And it always strikes me that somehow women's empowerment seems to be a women's issue and not a men's issue at all. I really hope that next time whenever we are talking about it, we have more men coming and joining us here. Because it's not just a women's issue. I think it's very important, like you said, to also recognize that, it is in the very core of our social structure that women are seen as and women have been accorded for generations together a secondary status. Let's just consider what are the kind of social norms and what is it that really holds back women. 2 or 3 things that constantly comes back again and again to us is that women are not allowed to take decisions on their own. Their mobility is restricted, and the primacy of marriage in their lives is so much that they're not expected to do anything else. Everything else kind of just somehow stays in the background in their lives. And it's very interesting that within this structure, which in its very core and in its essential is patriarchal, we want women to move ahead. Until and unless we're really going to break some of these boundaries and challenge some of these boundaries, it's not really going to happen. Also, one thing which I want to caution all of us, especially vis-a-vis entrepreneurship, is that somehow entrepreneurship is also seen as a solution to these 3 key challenges that I have just kind of listed for us. Entrepreneurship, like you very rightly said, somehow gets restricted to very micro household level enterprises for women, which essentially means that women can take a break from work when a family needs her the most, and therefore the man should continue doing what he's doing and the woman should not seek support from anyone else in that scenario. Her mobility is still restricted to the household. So what entrepreneurship is not doing is not challenging any of this, rather is catering to the very patriarchal structure in some ways. And that is something that we get very, very worried about. Because at the end of it, the kind of jobs women end up, forget about just entrepreneurship, even the kind of jobs that women are in are the jobs where, which are traditionally feminized, where the idea is that it's all right to pay a woman less. She does not necessarily need social security because she's not the primary earner of the family. Also, she does not necessarily need growth. She's doing it for the sake of doing it. She does not need any of those motivators that a man always seeks out. And that's how we kind of just keep pushing women back. Keep me on a time watch if you would want to. Yeah, I do realize we do get... also, I think and therefore it becomes imperative that we start thinking in terms of entrepreneurship not as something that's catering to patriarchy, but entrepreneurship as something which should help and equip women to be able to challenge the very social structures, to be able to really change these normative structures which restrict them in all possible ways. Some of the work that we do at ICRW is essentially International Center for Research on Women. We work with, our programs are rooted in evidence because that's where we lie. And we work with not just women, but we do realize over a period of time that it's critical to start working with girls when they're young, because that's where what is expected of you, what your role should be, how you should behave, how you should communicate, all of that gets set in. So while we talk about life skills, and this is often when I go in education and life skills kind of conferences, people talk of life skills as a solution for all problems. Unfortunately, life skills are equally gendered. They're not gender blind, they're not gender neutral, they're gendered. Because when you talk of a girl and you tell her that how to communicate, a girl is constantly told, you should be quiet, you should not assert yourself. And that's not what boys are told. So it's critical that the life skills that we provide them also take into cognizance all of these things, all the gendered barriers that we have, all the norms that we have. And at ICRW, that's what we do. Currently the program that I'm working on, and several of our other programs, where we work with adolescents, not just girls and boys, but also boys, because we realize that just working with girls is not going to change anything. So while we're talking about women entrepreneurs, it's equally important that men support that. Men in the family support it. So what we're trying to do is essentially trying to foster gender equitable attitudes among both girls and boys. Also equip women with skill set with life skills, employability skills, understanding as to why work is important for their own identity. Why is it that they need to have an identity of their own? Because that's where the challenge lies. So that's the kind of work that we do, and we're really hoping that when we talk about entrepreneurship, that's the lens that we bring in, and it should not be devoid of that lens.
Thank you, Prerna, for those insights. I think that would lead very nicely into Monica. If you could talk to us a little bit about what are the barriers from a family perspective.
Yeah, as Prerna rightly said, when we talk about barriers, we begin our life from the childhood with the barriers. You're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that, you're not supposed to not like this, you cannot go out at night, not at this hour. Maybe you can't even go out of station for studies, it happened in my life also. So from the beginning, from the childhood, we have to give that freedom to our girl child to take her own decision in a guided manner. Of course, they are not big enough that they can take their own decision at that point of time, but it has to be guided in the right direction. But freedom has to be given to them so that they can think independently, decide on to the course of action they are going to take in their lives as to how they want to proceed further. So if we start from the childhood and as we go up into adulthood, then it comes to choosing the career. Again, the freedom takes a big part there. There again, we should give them enough independence and freedom to decide their career options. There are a lot of career options like army. Nowadays, women are going towards that, but how many parents are willing to send them towards that career option? Because they feel it's not a very safe, it has a lot of odd hours. So then ultimately you end up with a career which is restricted to certain limitations. You cannot go beyond that. You have to choose a career where it is, you can come back timely, you can spend time with the family, you can do all your family chores, because at the end of the day, who's responsible for the family chores? It is the woman of the family. If your cook is not there, who's going to cook? The woman is going to cook. Who's going to look after the children? So, woman has to look after the children. So, in all this process, what happens is that there's a lot of pressure on the woman in choosing whatever she wants to do. In fact, I wouldn't say that she'll say that I have not chosen, but she'll be made to choose something which she may not actually. She may like to choose something else for herself. And if you go further beyond, this is a stage when, okay, you still not become a mother. But once you become a mother, it is all the more challenging because one, you are a woman, second, you are a mother. The kind of emotions and that you go through when you become a mother, you yourself are not willing to leave the child alone. Then where are the systems in the society in India that you can leave your child with? If you're not living, if you look at today's scenario, most of the families are in nuclear families. So in the nuclear families, if my child is unwell, who do I leave the child? I need to have the support systems for that so that we are free enough to pursue a career, pursue our choices. So ultimately it becomes so pressuresome for the mother that they themselves would not like to go out. They themselves would choose to do something which is flexible enough and then so that they can balance their family and the work life. Although I know these days the nuclear family system is so much in, but I personally am a believer of still joint families. I am coming from a joint family and perhaps that is the reason I have been able to continue my career. I have been working for 20 years and I'm almost at the top position in the company, which is a very well-known company, well-known business. But all this has happened just because of the support systems I always had in my family. My family, my in-laws, everybody has supported. So when I don't have to think when I go out of my house what will happen to my child. I know he is taken very well care of. Her grandmother is as good as his mother. She will take very good care of that. So support systems play such an important role in our life that we cannot pursue anything without that. Because ultimately we are balancing both work and family. And when it comes to choosing one thing, invariably I have seen women ended up choosing family because they don't want to leave, because they always feel that. And I think it is so natural, nobody can change that. As a woman, I always feel more inclined towards my family care, towards my family well-being. So it is the support system which we all need. That is why Prerna very well said that we need men to do all that. Entrepreneurship from women will come only when men can support us. In all the ways we are doing things, we need their support. If child is unwell, we need their help to take care of the child. If we need to balance our work and family, we need their help in that also. We want all the support from the men so that we can go ahead in life. So this is one thing which I would really say, that support systems have to work well if we want our women to go ahead in life.
Okay, so we've talked about the family, but what about the workplace? So Trupti, could you give us your thoughts on what are challenges to women in the workplace with respect to employment and entrepreneurship?
Thank you so much. Just building on very common themes. I personally worked for about 21 years. I've worked here in India, I've worked internationally. So I've seen a lot of, I've experienced personally as a woman, right, how difficult it is. What one notices is that, the entry percentage of women entering the workforce is quite high. Unfortunately, by in the 6, 7, 8 years of working is when we start dropping out. And that's where your middle management, that's where your talent gaps, all of those things start happening. And essentially, it's, I think one of it is, of course, stereotyping, the way that we think, the way the organizations think. It's obviously had more men than women in the past. It's built a certain norm of working. I think what helps really is, there was a very interesting thing that we used to do in my previous organization, where we used to train managers on unconscious bias. The word unconscious bias now actually has become quite common. But there was, I think, a research which was done by Harvard students. It was around scientific institutions, but trust me, it applies everywhere. They actually researched and said, if you give a resume and you just had name differentiations, female, male, or names which sounded of a particular ethnicity, there was a propensity of faculty to pick up male candidates. So STEM, we talk about women in science, we're talking about women in engineering, and of course there's a lot of change which is happening there. But there was, because it is an unconscious bias. Frankly, the resumes were the same. It's just the names that were changed. Okay. Not only that, it's also, and I see it when I hire, even myself as a woman, women will sometimes also have to change their own mindset. They come in from a back foot, position of back foot. I have to do so many things, so I can't be too ambitious. Therefore, I need a less pay. Often, men will negotiate much better salaries. So there are organizations which are also now starting doing, and I used to do it in my previous organization, to see if your performance rating curves, men, women, are you managing your differentiation properly? Is it really performance based? Are you really paying for performance? Are you differentiating by chance on gender? It's not so pronounced in India, though India also lags behind. I think in terms of Asian markets, gender pay inequality is high. Yeah, but it's very well pronounced when you talk to women in Europe, UK, Finland, US. It's a big thing from a diversity point of view. But that's also because we as women find it very difficult to negotiate. We carry that whole aura of, I'm the primary caregiver, I have to do this, so therefore I cannot, The third thing is networking, okay, the absence of role models. So for me personally, I think it's my role as a woman leader also to create that environment wherein I can attract more women. The 6 to 8 years dropouts should look at me and say, no, there is an environment where my needs will be understood. The concept of work versus role, and that's the role of technology. And I find it very hard. People in my team find it difficult. They say, okay, I have diversity metrics. I will meet them by hiring many in finance, in HR, marketing, but why not in sales? Why not in supply chain? Why not in manufacturing? And that's our own stereotyping that women may not want to work. Our own assumptions. Have you asked? Have you created that environment wherein they can come in and work? And many times women can do it, and the same thing applies to a man. Okay, you may have a special child at home, and therefore you cannot travel. So it's the same constraints, and also the use of technology. So I can work 6 hours and get 150% of my work done if I have the right tools and technology. If you accept it, and it's really about the goal and the output more than 9 to 5 type of work environment. See, and people have to start believing in that. When you're talking about gig economy, you're talking about flexible workforces. This is something that will come to us in the next 10 years with our own children, irrespective of gender. So I think those are the barriers we have to start letting down in the workplace. Another, I think, important aspect which I just point to slip my mind was also around. I spoke about networking and I spoke about technology and equal pay. That's what strikes me. If the point comes back, I'll come back and share with you. But these are the things I think which create the workplace barriers thing. And I think one thing I want to talk about entrepreneurship. Whatever I see, entrepreneurship is again the same mindset with which women approach it. They don't want to be very ambitious because घर भी चलाना है. How do I pitch? So the point that I missed was networking. Men network very well. They're able to, when it comes to entrepreneurship as well, the ability to get funding, the structured approach, because there are more men obviously who are rolling out the funds, difficult for women. So I think for us also to learn and for the other gender to also accept, there are various other models of working is necessary. I think that's where we undermine ourselves a bit. You'll find them working out of homes, their capitals are much smaller. Also because of the fact that, this whole constraint thinking of I have to run the house, I have to take care of the kids, and therefore I can't be bold and ambitious. How do I pitch myself? I think that piece of being able to create that role model, that networking, resource groups is very useful from even adolescent kind of grow up girls, so that they learn how to develop those social skills. Unfortunately, as the gender equalizes, those are problems that will slowly start resolving. I always joke, and it just came in as an aha moment to me and said, every time you look at a woman driver, I don't drive by the way. I cannot drive in Delhi. So there's always this joke of, it must be a woman driver, she's made a mistake. Right? But the world has maximum number of men, so just reverse it. And if you imagine only had women drivers, there were men driving, I'm sure we'll be seeing the same thing, right? So it's a lot about that whole, the norms with which we've kind of grown up. So I guess that's what I wanted to say.
All right, great, thank you. So we've talked about the situation in India, right? In terms of people's mindsets, families' mindsets, perhaps women's own mindsets, the workplace's mindsets. We've now got with us two very successful women from Iran and the Czech Republic. So it would be very good to get your opinions on what is the situation like for women, what is the entrepreneurial environment like for women. So Elham, if we start with you.
Thank you very much. It is very interesting for me that notice the problems that women in India are confronting with are very similar to what we experience in Iran. They are so similar to each other. Maybe because Iran is also a traditional society which is developing toward modernism. So maybe that's the reason for these similarities, for these same problems. Actually, like you, Iranian women are expected to sit at home, raise their children, do the houseworks, and nothing more. But something which is interesting, that in Iran the number of high educated women is more than men. So they know what they want and what they want to do. they don't want to stay at home anymore, and they want to have their lives in their own hands. So they have started to fight and struggle for their rights. You see, we have many problems there, especially in workplaces. The discrimination is very high. You know, we don't have the same salaries with men, insurances, and also the job opportunities. When there is a man and a woman with the same experience, same education, same qualifications, but it is the man who is chosen to take the job. But as I told you, we are trying to do something, and it can be touched, it can be felt in our society. Nowadays, we can see, as I told you, the number of educated women is more than men, and also you can see women step by step in high levels of authorities, even in the government. After revolution, in the first parliament, we just had 4 women representatives, but now in the last parliament, it has increased to 17. And their visions and their attitudes have been changed a lot. Well, actually, our government and our legal systems also have some problems toward this. Although in government they are doing something about women health care and also education for girls, but it is not enough yet. And this is the reason that women are trying to do something about it. Unfortunately, we don't have women organizations, very powerful women organizations now, but I can see that it is forming, and they are doing something about it. Well, actually, the rate of women worker is around 12% of women population in Iran, and around 19 million women are housewives, houseworkers. They work in the house, but there are, especially in villages and rural areas, that women are working, and they have very great role in the economy of the family, and even I can say country. But they haven't been seen in the statistics. But as I told you, we are trying to do some, and nowadays you can see in our society some very successful startups which are led by women, not men. And for example, we have a lady in Iran which is I think she is one of the richest person in Iran, and she is leading an e-commerce company which has a very great role in the economy of the country. Well, so it seems that some good steps are going on, and we hope for a better situation. And as you see, I'm here as a postgraduated Iranian woman who works in an international level, and I'm talking to you great people of India.
Thank you, Elham. But I'd say, the situation in India is certainly similar. That there are some women who are in leadership positions, but for the vast majority of women, that is not the case. And I think that's where we'd like to reach. Markéta, what about the Czech Republic? It's a country we'd expect is a lot more empowered, but do you face similar challenges? And what is the context there?
What should I say? For us, it's very, very easy, because I came from the Czech Republic, which is a very small country in Central Europe, and we have around 10 million people, just like Delhi. But our society is very open, friendly, very tolerant, very respectful towards women.
but we don't have any barriers like you, but still we have some small men dominance on the job market or for the salaries. Yes, we have it. But I think it's everywhere, also in other countries in Europe, also in the USA. But I am here as a festival director, and our festival is the biggest and oldest festival for children and youth in the world. So it could be maybe a good example that in our country it works. We don't have any big women organization, just very small one like gender studies. And I don't know what to say now, because for us in the Czech Republic is it very, very easy. So our society is very open to us as a women. So it's quite embarrassing to us, to you. And we have also many because I'm working in film industry, so we have many female directors, many female filmmakers, many female politics, and we don't need quotes or something stuff like that. It's a natural.
All right, great. Thanks, Marketa. I think that's a situation that we aspire to reach in India. So I think I'd like to now take the conversation towards CSR and what role CSR can play towards women's empowerment and entrepreneurship. And I think from here it would be good to get perspectives from Dr. Shivani Bharadwaj, who's coming from the civil society perspective, and then from Shruti, who's coming from the corporate CSR perspective. So Shivani.
In CSR, companies have put in some money in women empowerment work. There is Coke, Nestle, Unilever, who have impacted gender equity. But most of this work is outside India. In India, we have a very small percentage which goes on women empowerment work. So one will have to find out why. CSR at present is trying to just find its role, and when women entrepreneurs or women empowerment program project proposals are going to CSR companies, they would rather say education is something that we fund. Okay, little bit of health, we are doing health, so we can fund women's health. They are not looking at who the women are, because women are also a homogeneous group. They are there to be recognized for their vulnerabilities, and also to see where they are positioned. There are women who are living within homes, and there are women who are living outside homes, streets, institutions. I am working for Woden Care right now, and this is the 5% orphans category, which comes out of orphanages at 18 years of age. And at that age, this young woman is just not skilled to do anything, because she's not socialized. She's been totally institution bound. There has been no even gendered socialization to even cook, to manage your own finances. So this is one particular kind of vulnerability. Whereas a woman in homes who may be women workers, it could be a fish worker, it could be a sanitation worker, it could be a farm woman. They have different kinds of needs. So one will have to look at sectoral issues and women issues within it. But a CSR company would first of all not even pay you for the baseline study for this. They just want a quick fix something, and there's a board.
We need to work in a planned and structured manner in order to achieve the change in mindsets and in societal structures required. So thank you very much.
Thank you.